Alright, it's time to be serious. Listen, I know, this is Squeak Squad, mice are in it, they're super cool. Wouldn't it be so great if I did mouse VTubing for a day so I could fit the game more? No. No. No! Oh. I hope nobody actually thought I was being serious there. Let's just cover Squeak Squad. But before we dive any deeper into the video, if you like what you see and want to help me out, please consider thinking this video is the best by giving it a like. Tell me what your thoughts are on Kirby Squeak Squad in the comments, and ring the notification bell after subscribing to really help me out. You can find me on Twitch, join my Discord server, or follow my Twitter if you like me that much, but regardless, I appreciate it. And if you do really like the video, hey, I have a playlist full of other ones just like it for every main series Kirby game. It's in the description and at the start of the video, so go check that out. Now then, you all know the plot synopsis for Squeak Squad. Trust me, even if you don't think you do, you do. Kirby is about to dig into a strawberry shortcake before it gets stolen. Kirby assumes that King Dedede is up to no good again and ventures to get his cake back. That's it. The Squeak Squad squeaks show up shortly into the story, and they're really cool, but the crux of this story is that Kirby wants to get that cake back. I don't talk about Kirby stories very often in these, since these games are typically much more about the platforming than the stories. When I think about which Kirby game had the first big deal story, a few different answers come to mind. You could argue a game like Adventure or 64, but the actual stories themselves are nothing to really write home about. I hear a lot of people say a game like Forgotten Land, or Triple Deluxe, or Epic Yarn, even Superstar Ultra would be the first one, and while there's nothing wrong with those stories, the first time a Kirby story really took off was, beyond the shadow of any doubt, Squeak Squad. This is a Kirby story that, for as simple and basic as it is still talked about over 15 years later. Everybody who knows anything about Kirby knows about Kirby going on a total rampage to rescue back some stolen cake. And while the total carnage part is annoyingly overblown by people, this is nothing to the fault of the actual game, the actual meat and potatoes of the story, big events happening around Kirby, this small little blob who just wants to eat lunch, is entirely accurate, hilarious, and carries through the game from the very beginning to the very end. And when Meta Knight jumps in during the late game, it gets even funnier. But speaking of game, let's talk about the game. Squeak Squad, being on the DS, makes use of the touchscreen, but not to nearly the same extent as Canvas Curse. This is good. Canvas Curse is a fine game and all, but if you stray too far from tradition, you can alienate fans. Squeak Squad keeps it simple. This is traditional Kirby with some new bells and whistles, and the touchscreen is used to store the defining new addition, Bubbles and Treasure. To briefly explain why this is such a good idea, Treasure functions like Treasure from Great Cave, while Bubbles function like the small goodies, such as food and 1-ups, from Amazing Mirror. This solves the issue that a lot of the treasures in Amazing Mirror are not worth it, while still giving you more worthwhile rewards than items that only exist for money, like in Great Cave. The meaningful unlockables in this game are a lot more than just spray paint and health, although those return. You can put together these nifty little pictures, unlock an ability room, and even get a new ability, Ghost. This is exactly what I was talking about during Amazing Mirror when I said the chests needed more meaning than just health and 1-ups, but the best kind of unlockable I saved for last, ability scrolls. With these, you can unlock moves or attributes, combinations, works really, for any ability. Cutter becomes much larger and stronger, Wheel can pick up the attribute of whatever terrain it's going over, even Sleep gets some action, restoring your health as you use it. This gives Kirby and the abilities a real sense of progression as you play through the game without making Kirby any worse to play at the start. Standalone Kirby is really fun here, as the slight tweaks to the physics and momentum make movement in this game among the best in the series, as well as their simplistic nature will ensure you'll always want one around. And it's never been easier to get abilities thanks to having the bubbles on the bottom screen. It isn't broken or anything since you're limited to 5 bubbles and chests at once, but finding a Cutter bubble and later down the line you decide, I want to use Cutter. If you still have that bubble, boom, you've got it. It isn't flashy or gimmicky, but the functionality of it all being amazing is hard to deny. especially as the bubble ability is basically tailor-made to help you out in this regard. You can even use the bubbles to mix abilities together. If you're good enough, you can get any ability you want this way at any time. Treasure chests are often stored here too, and while there's not much to say on chests since you only get their hidden goodies at the end of the level, your competition for these chests is far more interesting. The game is called Squeak Squad after all, so it stands to reason that at the end of most levels, you need to fight the Squeaks for some treasure. These are always a thrill, as these sections are designed around which member of the Squeaks you're fighting and what their strong suits are. Starro fights you in small, closed-off areas, Doc fights you in large, wide-open areas, and Spinny often races you to the treasure. They're all a blast and are among the highlights of the entire game. Squeak Squad isn't the most innovative Kirby game or anything, but it really dialed down on making the Kirby experience as functionally fun as it possibly could. Not every game has to be innovative, and I'm glad that, instead of trying to make something totally different, the devs decided to just finally improve what already worked and trim the fat, so to speak. Beyond the hilarious story cutscenes, there's nothing standing in between you and the game, potentially giving Squeak Squad the overall best pacing in the series. That absolutely counts for something, and is why Squeak Squad is the best game in the series. Do I really need to do this? Look, I am more than happy to give you wonderful people the content you crave, but the simple fact of the matter is that the game feels like it doesn't care, so why should I? And look, I've said this in previous videos of this style, I'm not here to pick on real people, they're just doing their job, but the game itself? Come on, there is no inspiration here. It's so dry, so basic, so unoriginal. We've seen all of this before with actual sparks of innovation, charm, care, passion, effort. Squeak Squad just has nothing going for it. To start with, the levels. Wow, 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 wow. There is nothing to these. What is there to even say? You're Kirby, you go through levels, you finish them, start, there's treasures to find and puzzles to solve. That's something else? I can't think of anything to actually say on the puzzles. They're there. They're not very good. There is an unlockable level in every world, but there's also a mini level where you don't actually do anything. I guess I gotta give it, they're more substantial than the actual mini games, but The world map to actually get to levels 2 is uninspired and just a level select, a first for the series and definitely a new low for it. Well, I guess it's not a first, Dreamland 3 and 64 also did that, but they were far more inspired in their approach, with 64 being like a coloring book through space, and Dreamland 3 fit the artistic direction of crayon coloring book. Squeak Squad's aesthetic is a whole lot of nothing though, so it fits just fine, I guess. I know the world map may not sound like a lot, but even ignoring 64 and Dreamland 3, or other games that came after that did this much better, like Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot, on top of that, look at what the world map does for games that actually do something with it, like Adventure, Amazing Mirror, Epic Yarn, Return to Dreamland. Having an actual world map to run around in is infinitely better. And those unlockables, give me a break. Having an unlockable copy ability sounds like the coolest idea ever, but Ghost actually has to be the worst ability that isn't a gag. Which you could honestly argue this is a gag, but why would you want to slowly walk around as an enemy whose attacks are all worse than literally all of Kirby's? What a waste of an incredible idea. None of the other unlockables are actually worth anything, at least not ones that fit better with Amazing Mirror, considering that game actually warrants things like an increased health bar and a better sense of satisfaction for finding things like spray paint. It really all just comes back to the levels though. Most of the game is genuinely passable, but therein lies a whole other issue. It just settles for being passable and becomes something far worse than bad. It's all forgettable. There is no other Kirby game that leaves as little of an impression as Squeak Squad because none of it stands out. If you want a Kirby game that will make you think, boy howdy, that sure was a Kirby game, probably nothing else, but hey, this is the one. The only thing that really stands out as not just being okay are the levels, and those are not good. The Squeak Squad themselves were wasted on this game. Great designs just gone to total waste. In the Star Allies trailer for DeRoach, there's a very brief bit at the end of DeRoach and all of the Squeaks chasing after Kirby, and it really hits you right there that, yeah, they really did deserve so much better. We have Mass Attack at least, but in their actual game, it's looking rough. Terrible levels with a lack of any kind of inspiration or charm, and nothing else that even remotely stands out makes Squeak Squad the worst game in the series. We stand DeRoach. All of the Squeaks are cool, but on my server, we specifically stand DeRoach. Otherwise, most of the server didn't really seem to care very much about this one, but the people who did really liked it, actually. Fun collectibles, it has animal in it, abilities in general are enjoyable, and did I mention DeRoach yet? I don't like to directly quote in these, but when I read the quote, it's more amazing than the mirror that claims to be as such. I knew I had to include it, especially because I talked about making jokes with Amazing Mirror. What, 2 days ago? I had to do it. I hate to say this so bluntly, but Squeak Squad doesn't do a whole lot right. On the bright side, it doesn't do a whole lot wrong either, and the few things it does do right, it does really well. Still, every time I play it, I can't help but want something more out of it. The levels are generic, there are far too many worlds in the game, and this may be the first Kirby game so far where I can't think of anything substantial that was introduced. The bottom screen holding ability bubbles simply isn't enough to justify how samey this feels compared to other Kirby games, both before and after. Still, to ignore what it does right would be completely wrong. The Squeaks, despite having no story presence, were a fantastic idea, and the chases involving them at the end of every level are some of the highlights of the entire game. The movement and physics in this game, I'll be honest, I don't like, but if you're a fan of loose controls and you thought even Amazing Mirror was a little loose, this game is right up your alley. And what I like is how insane the devs went with how berserk abilities could be. I try to avoid talking about speedruns in these videos to keep them as broad as possible, but Squeak Squad 100% is genuinely in the running for the single best Kirby speedrun of all time. It is just so good. Small things like the music and the spray paint have been improved from previous games of this style, which is also very nice. Unfortunately, I don't think it's enough to save Squeak Squad from being not that good. It is a good game, don't let anyone tell you otherwise, but that's really the best it could hope to be. Could be better, could be worse. The DS had 4 Kirby games, and of them, while I can't say Squeak Squad is the objective worst or anything, it definitely feels like it had the least going into it. Even Mass Attack, a 2011 DS game that came out a month before Return to Dreamland, at least had hubbub going for it before Return came out. Plus, you could call it the last Kirby game of its era, one of the last DS games, etc. I like Squeak Squad, maybe I'd even call it underrated, but it's nothing special.